The art of letting go, rebuilding your identity after everything falls apart. You lost something. Maybe it was a person. Maybe it was a version of yourself you believed in. Maybe it was a dream you spent years building, brick by brick, only to watch it crumble in a single moment. And now you're standing in the rubble. Good. I mean that. Because Machiavelli didn't write for men who had everything. He wrote for men who had lost everything and were calculating their return. Most people will tell you to grieve, to heal, to give it time. I'm not most people. I'm here to tell you that the moment everything fell apart was the moment your real education began. Pain is not a punishment. It is a curriculum. The man you were before the collapse, he was soft in places he didn't even know existed. He had blind spots, loyalties to people who didn't deserve them, beliefs about the world that were never tested. The collapse tested them, and they failed. Which means you, the real you, now have data, cold, hard, undeniable data about what was real and what was an illusion. Most men mourn the illusion. The powerful ones, they weaponize the lesson. So before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Type the words, "I am the storm," because that's what you are. Not the wreckage, the storm that walks out of it. Let's begin. Part 1. The illusion you were protecting. Here is the truth most men cannot face. You weren't just attached to what you lost. You were attached to the story you built around it. The relationship wasn't just a person. It was proof that you were lovable. The career wasn't just a job. It was evidence that you were worthy. The friendship wasn't just company. It was confirmation that you mattered. You see the problem now. You outsourced your identity. You handed the pen to someone else and let them write your value. Machiavelli warned us about this, not in soft language, not with comfort. He said, plainly, a man who depends on others for his position will always fall when those others decide to leave. You built your throne on borrowed ground, and borrowed ground always gets reclaimed. This is not cruelty. This is architecture. The structure was flawed from the foundation. The collapse was not bad luck. It was inevitable. Stop blaming the people who left. Stop replaying conversations. Stop searching for the moment things went wrong. The moment things went wrong was the moment you needed external validation to feel whole. That is the illusion. That is what fell apart. Not your life, your dependency. And dependency, in Machiavellian terms, is the most dangerous vulnerability a man can carry. It makes you predictable, manipulable, weak in ways your enemies will find before you do. So right now, I want you to comment one word: reclaimed. Because that is what you are doing. You are reclaiming the pen. You are reclaiming the story. You are reclaiming the throne. But this time, you will build it on ground that belongs to you. Unshakable, unmovable, yours. Part 2. Burning the old self. There is a moment, and you will know it when it comes, where you have to make a decision. Do you try to rebuild what was, or do you burn it completely and build something new? Most men choose reconstruction. They go back to the same patterns, the same habits, the same emotional blueprints that created the collapse in the first place. They patch the walls, repaint the ceiling, and call it healing. It is not healing. It is repetition, wearing a disguise. Machiavelli studied rulers who fell and rose again. The ones who failed a second time, they returned as the same man. Same weaknesses, same blind spots, same desperate need to be understood by people who never truly saw them. The ones who rose permanently, they came back as someone unrecognizable. That is your assignment. Not to heal the old self, not to repair him, not to justify him or defend the choices he made. Your assignment is to let him die with dignity and step forward as something the world has not yet encountered. This requires a specific kind of ruthlessness, not toward others, toward yourself. You must look at every belief you carried and ask, did I choose this? Or was it handed to me by someone who needed me small? You must examine every habit and ask, does this serve the man I am becoming? Or does it comfort the man I am trying to leave behind? You must study your own patterns the way a general studies enemy terrain. Clinically, without sentiment, without excuse. Because the old self had charm, he had familiarity. He will whisper to you in weak moments. He will call it wisdom. He will dress regression up as peace. Do not listen. Peace built on stagnation is not peace. It is surrender with better lighting. Burn the blueprint. Burn the narrative. Burn every version of yourself that required someone else's approval to feel legitimate. What survives that fire? That is who you actually are. Comment right now, I choose the fire. Because the men who choose the fire never fear burning again. Part 3. The Machiavellian Rebuild. Now we build. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not with vision boards and morning affirmations whispered into a mirror. We build strategically. This is where Machiavelli separates from every self-help philosophy ever written. He did not believe in hoping your way to power. He did not believe in attracting success through positivity. He believed in engineering outcomes through calculated, disciplined, relentless action. And that is exactly what you are going to do. The rebuild begins with one question, not who do I want to be? That question is too soft, too vague. It gives you room to dream without demanding that you decide. The real question is, what kind of man is impossible to destroy? Sit with that, because that is your blueprint now. A man who is impossible to destroy does not place his entire emotional architecture inside another person. He does not build his confidence on external results alone. He does not need the room to validate him before he walks in already knowing his worth. He is self-contained, self-directed, self-authorized. In Machiavellian terms, he controls the conditions of his own reality rather than reacting to the conditions others create for him. So here is how the rebuild actually works. First, you identify your dependencies. Every area of your life where your stability relies on something outside your control. Relationships, income, reputation, approval. Map them all. Look at them without flinching. These are your vulnerabilities. A Machiavellian man does not ignore vulnerabilities. He eliminates them or hedges against them. Second, you build new competencies. Skills, knowledge, physical discipline, financial literacy. Every new competency you develop is a wall around your sovereignty. The more capable you become, the less leverage the world has over you. Third, you control your inner narrative with iron discipline. The stories you tell yourself about who you are determine every decision you make. A weak narrative produces weak choices. Rewrite it deliberately, ruthlessly, with the precision of someone who understands that perception, starting with self-perception, is the foundation of all real power. Fourth, you operate in silence. The rebuild is not a public performance. It is not content. It is not updates for people who watched you fall. The most dangerous transformations happen in private. Let them wonder, let them assume, let them underestimate. Your silence is your strategy. Your progress is your weapon. And when you finally emerge, and you will, they will not see it coming. Comment, right now built in silence. Because the men who rebuild in silence always arrive louder than anyone expected. Part 4. The psychology of detachment. Let me tell you something that will disturb you at first, then liberate you completely. The people who hurt you most, the ones who left, betrayed, dismissed, or underestimated you, they were not villains in your story. They were mirrors. Every person who wounded you showed you exactly where you were unprotected. Every betrayal exposed a blind spot. Every abandonment revealed a dependency you had not yet confronted. Every dismissal pointed directly at a place where you had not yet fully claimed your own worth. This is not victim blaming. This is dark psychology operating at its highest level. Because the moment you stop casting people as villains and start reading them as data, you become untouchable. Villains have power over you. Data does not. This is the psychology of detachment, and it is the most misunderstood concept in the entire architecture of personal power. Detachment does not mean you feel nothing. That is not strength, that is numbness. And numbness is just pain that gave up trying to communicate. True detachment means you feel everything, and you are controlled by none of it. You observe your emotions the way a chess player observes the board, with full attention, with complete clarity, without letting any single piece dictate the entire strategy. Machiavelli understood this at a level most modern men never reach. He wrote that the wise man must appear moved without being moved. He must engage fully while remaining internally sovereign. He must be present in the emotion without being prisoner to it. That is the standard. Presence without imprisonment. So, how do you build this? You begin by creating distance between the event and your response. Not suppression. Distance. When something triggers you, and things will trigger you, you pause. You observe the reaction rising inside you like weather. You name it. You ask what it is protecting. And then you choose your response, rather than performing your reaction. This single practice, applied consistently, will make you more powerful than 90% of the men around you. Because most men are entirely reactive. They are puppets of circumstance. Pull the right string and they dance exactly as expected. You will not dance. You will watch. You will calculate. You will decide. There is something else detachment gives you that nothing else can. It gives you the ability to walk away from conversations, from relationships, from opportunities that compromise your integrity, from rooms that require you to shrink. A man who can walk away from anything holds all the power in every situation. Because power does not live with the one who needs the outcome most. Power lives with the one who is completely prepared to leave. Detach from the outcome. Attach to the standard. Comment right now, I control the response. Because the man who controls his response controls his entire world. And that world, once you master this, becomes completely, permanently yours. Part 5. Your enemies, ARE, your educators. Most men waste their enemies. They spend enormous energy hating them, resenting them, replaying every wrong committed against them at 3 in the morning, when the world is quiet and the wounds feel fresh. They fantasize about revenge. They rehearse arguments in the shower. They track the lives of people who have moved on, searching for signs of karmic justice that may never arrive. And in doing all of this, they hand their enemies something priceless. Their attention, their energy, their time, their mental real estate. This is the greatest strategic error a man can make. Machiavelli was ruthlessly clear on this point. He did not say forgive your enemies. He did not say forget them either. He said something far more powerful. He said understand them, study them, extract every lesson they carry, and then use that intelligence to make yourself impossible to defeat the same way twice. That is not weakness. That is the coldest, most calculated form of strength available to a human being. So let us reframe every enemy you have ever had. The person who betrayed your trust. They taught you that loyalty must be observed over time, never assumed at the beginning. They showed you the difference between someone who performs trustworthiness and someone who actually carries it in their character. That lesson alone, if applied correctly, will protect you from an entire category of future pain. The person who publicly humiliated you. They taught you that your reputation is an asset requiring active management. That perception is architecture, that the man who controls the narrative controls the room. You were unprepared for that war. Now you know it exists. Now you can fight it. The person who underestimated you, they gave you the single greatest tactical advantage available in any arena. Invisibility. The underestimated man moves without resistance. He builds without interference. He arrives at levels of power that nobody saw coming because nobody thought to watch him closely enough. Every person who dismissed you handed you a cloak. Wear it strategically. The person who abandoned you, they taught you self-sufficiency in a language nothing else could have spoken loudly enough. You would never have discovered the depth of your own capability if they had stayed. Their absence created a vacancy that you were forced to fill yourself. And in filling it, you found resources inside you that comfort would have permanently hidden. This is the Machiavellian education. It does not arrive in classrooms. It does not arrive in books alone. It arrives through friction, through opposition, through the people and circumstances that were supposed to break you, and instead, if you are paying attention, forge you. But here is what separates the powerful from the bitter. Both groups experienced the same pain. Both were betrayed. Both were underestimated. Both lost things that mattered deeply. The difference is what they did with the data. Bitter men collect wounds. Powerful men collect wisdom. Bitter men build cases. Powerful men build empires. Bitter men wait for apologies that will never come. Powerful men stopped needing them years ago because they already extracted everything valuable from the experience and moved forward without looking back even once. Your enemies are not obstacles in your story. They are chapters in your education. Read them carefully. Learn them completely. Thank them silently. Then outgrow them so completely and so ruthlessly that the very memory of their power over you becomes almost impossible to believe. Comment right now, "My pain is my power," because the man who transforms suffering into strategy has just become the most dangerous person in any room he enters. Part 6. The new identity contract. Everything we have covered until this point has been demolition, tearing down the illusions, burning the old self, studying the collapse, extracting intelligence from enemies, mastering detachment, building in silence. All of that was necessary. All of that was preparation. But preparation without commitment is just philosophy. And philosophy without action is just expensive entertainment for men who prefer thinking about change over actually executing it. So now, right now, we draw up the contract. Not with anyone else, with yourself. The most binding, most consequential, most ruthlessly enforced agreement you will ever sign. Because every other contract in your life can be disputed, renegotiated, or broken by external parties. This one cannot. This one lives entirely within your own jurisdiction, which means the only person who can honor it or violate it is you. Machiavelli understood that a prince who cannot govern himself cannot govern anything else. Self-mastery is not a personality trait. It is the prerequisite for all other forms of power. Before you can command rooms, you must command your own mind. Before you can build empires, you must build discipline inside the private hours when no audience is watching and no applause is coming. The new identity contract begins with a declaration of what you are no longer willing to be, not what you want, what you refuse. You refuse to be the man who shrinks in rooms that do not deserve his full presence. You refuse to be the man who accepts treatment that contradicts his value because he fears the discomfort of enforcing his own standards. You refuse to be the man who explains himself endlessly to people who have already decided what they think of him. You refuse to be the man who confuses familiarity with loyalty, history with trust, or longevity with worth. Write that refusal into your identity, like stone. Not like sand that reshapes under pressure, like stone that forces the water to move around it. Now the second part of the contract, what you commit to becoming. You commit to radical self-accountability. Every result in your life is a reflection of a decision you made or failed to make. This is not punishment. This is power. Because if your decisions created your current reality, then better decisions create a better one. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the architect of response. You commit to building competence relentlessly, in your body, in your finances, in your craft, in your emotional intelligence. Competence is confidence with evidence behind it. And a man who is genuinely capable does not need to perform confidence. He simply operates from it naturally, quietly, and without apology. You commit to protecting your energy with the ferocity of a man who finally understands it is his most finite and valuable resource. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every conversation deserves your full engagement. Not every opinion about your life deserves space inside your mind. You become selective, deliberately, unapologetically. You commit to consistency over intensity. Most men are motivated by emotion. They train hard for 2 weeks, then disappear. They work with focus for 3 days, then collapse into distraction. Emotion-driven action is unreliable. System-driven action is unstoppable. You build systems. You follow them when motivation is high and especially when it is not. Because discipline practiced in the absence of motivation is the only kind that actually builds character. And finally, you commit to becoming a man whose internal world is so structured, so sovereign, so completely self-directed that no single external event, no loss, no betrayal, no failure, no rejection can permanently destabilize what you have built inside yourself. That is the standard. That is the contract. Not a wish, not a hope, not an intention that fades by Thursday. A binding, non-negotiable, ironclad agreement between you and the most powerful version of yourself that is waiting, with extraordinary patience, for you to finally arrive. Sign it right now by commenting, "Contract signed." Because the moment you commit to this standard, everything begins to change. Not around you, inside you, which is the only place change has ever actually mattered. Part 7. Power, silence, and the art of disappearing. There is a move that the most powerful men in history have made at the most critical moments of their lives. They disappeared, not in weakness, not in defeat, not running from the world with their wounds exposed and their dignity scattered behind them like broken glass on a cold floor. They disappeared with intention. They removed themselves from the noise, from the opinions, from the audiences who had grown comfortable watching them perform a version of themselves that no longer existed. They stepped back from the visibility that was keeping them small, because sometimes the spotlight does not illuminate you. Sometimes it freezes you. It locks you into a version of yourself that the audience expects, demands, and will punish you for outgrowing. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man does not reveal his full hand, not to his allies, not to his enemies, not to the world watching him. A man fully seen is a man fully mapped, and a man fully mapped is a man fully vulnerable. Silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. When you go quiet, truly quiet, several things happen simultaneously that most people never calculate in advance. First, you stop feeding the narrative others have constructed about you. Every response you give, every explanation you offer, every defense you mount, it all becomes material for people who were never on your side to begin with. Your silence starves that machinery. Without your reaction, the story has no fuel. It dies quietly in rooms you are no longer present in. Second, you create mystery. And mystery, in the architecture of power and influence, is extraordinarily valuable. People are drawn toward what they cannot fully read. The man who is completely legible holds no fascination. The man who operates with quiet confidence and reveals himself selectively commands attention in every room he enters without demanding a single moment of it. Third, and most critically, silence gives you the space to actually transform. Transformation is an internal process. It requires depth. It requires reflection. It requires honest conversations with yourself that cannot happen when you are constantly performing for an external audience. The men who make the most dramatic and permanent changes in their lives are almost always the ones who made those changes privately, away from commentary, away from encouragement, away from the subtle pressure of public accountability that secretly keeps many men performing change rather than actually executing it. So what does the art of disappearing actually look like in practice? It looks like logging off without announcing that you are logging off. It looks like working on your craft without broadcasting every milestone. It looks like rebuilding your finances without discussing your strategy with people whose financial reality is beneath where you are headed. It looks like ending relationships quietly and completely, without dramatic exits, without final speeches, without the need for the other person to understand or validate your decision to leave. It looks like becoming so internally occupied, so genuinely focused on the construction of your next level, that the opinions of people standing at your previous level simply lose the frequency required to reach you. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of the prince who controls perception. You cannot control what people think about you, but you can absolutely control how much access they have to the raw material they need to form those thoughts. Disappear strategically, and you control the narrative by default, because in your absence, the most powerful version of you becomes the one that lives in their imagination. Let them imagine. Let them speculate. Let them watch the door, waiting for a version of you that is never coming back. Because the man who walks back through that door will be so fundamentally different, so quietly powerful, so completely rebuilt from the foundation upward, that the people who thought they knew you will feel like they are meeting a stranger. And they will be absolutely right. They are. The old version they catalogued, judged, and underestimated, he is gone. What stands in his place has been forged in silence, sharpened in solitude, and tested in the deepest and most private chambers of personal transformation that no audience ever witnessed and no critic ever had access to. That man, the one built in the dark, is the most dangerous kind. Because nobody saw him coming. Comment right now. The ghost that came back. Because you did not just survive the silence, you used it. You weaponized it. You emerged from it, carrying everything the world tried to take from you, and more.